Right, hello again. Welcome to the second episode of the live axle conversion in the Subaru Forester. I'm not very good at estimating the length of these videos clearly, so that's why they sort of end abruptly, because it does drag on for a bit because I just yabber on for ages. So anyway, next one is good. Starting to make some real progress, which is awesome, so hope you enjoy. Right, so just started sort of to strip this axle down. I'm just going to pretty much have to cut off all the mounts. Again, a little bit limited for space, and it's just started raining too, which is cool. I was, ideally going to cut all of the stuff off outside just to reduce the mess inside, but yeah, that hasn't happened, so just got to start chopping. Right, so a bit of an update, been cutting away now for a while, feels like a very long time. What I've done, pretty much tried to cut all the mounts off without cutting the tube, so trying to cut everything back to the weld sort of like as close as I can, and then go over everything with like a flapper disc just to get it flat, and again try not to take anything out of the actual housing surface. But I don't think it's going to put too much heat into it, cutting it like this. I don't know, if I had an oxy on it it would be different, but feeling the tube, it doesn't feel that hot, so it should be fine. Anyway, back on the flapper disc and clean her all up. Right, bit of an update. It's raining and gross outside, but just been attacking this diff. Was going around it with a flapper disc, you can sort of see here. But just with where I've sort of cut it, it was taking a fair bit, so then I've gone over them with a grinding wheel and then sort of tried to get it as close as possible, and then I'm going to have to go over it with a flapper again, so quite tedious, takes a fair bit of time. Having a bit of a break from it, just got a call from Doc saying that he's got a bit of time to have a look at some things, so going to run the 31 down there now, see what we can find. I might try and get the camera out. I know that I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but I get very in my head about it all, but we'll see what the go is. But good to have a break from this. Yes, fair bit of time to get it all sorted, but only have to do this once, hopefully don't mess it up. So come back to it all in a bit, have a bit of a rest. Good morning. So next day, ended up taking the 31 down to Doc's last night. We found out what was wrong with the ECU, why we couldn't get the ROM tune to work, and it was basically there was just a solder joint that was causing some dramas, which a bit of a headache for him to figure out. But we ended up getting it sorted, chucked a NIS tune in it because it's going to need it eventually anyway. Car made 88 kilowatts, which I think we calculated it to be around 95, 96 or something at the wheels, just with the info we could from factory, sorry, just with the info I can find online. So 10 kilowatts over what, almost 40 years is not bad at all. So didn't dyno it initially to see what it was making, to sort of see if it was down on power, just with all of the dramas with the ECU and whatnot. So I did, take it for a drive last night. It was a bit wet, so I didn't, couldn't get too much of a gauge, but it does feel peppier. It does feel like it's picked up a bit, which is cool. I won't go into what the plans are for the car moving forward just yet, but it is a relief to get that thing sorted. Having the new tune in there just keeps it open for everything else as well, so that's cool. Basically been slaving away at this diff, spent a decent bit of time again on the grinder, as you can see, but basically got all of the mounts that were on it grinded back, flapper disc back, so that's cool. Got a little bit of research to do now, just in regards to, basically it seems like quite often tubes get split and retubed or whatever. From what I've looked into, it's just I don't have the capacity, I don't have the equipment to do that. So I'm going to sort of just try and do some research and figure out what the options are, in terms of splitting the tube for all of the link bracket, the diamond brackets and stuff for the 4 links. So just waiting to get some feedback now, but yeah, pretty much that's cool. I've got some stubs to weld onto the coilovers just so that I can make up some brackets to suit the diff. Just because yes, the factory Subaru ones won't work, so I think they're out of some Civic, just found on my marketplace for cheap. So then got to do that, weld them to the bottom of the BCs that I've got now. But before doing any of that, I've got a lot more marking I need to do of the car and on the ground, and just center points, and then I'll need to do the same with the diff, get the diff gutted, get the crown and pinion and axles and everything out of it as well, and then start putting some marks on that too. So yeah, I'm gonna get into it. Bit tedious, but got everything sort of level again. It did move a fair bit just from having the weight out of the back, but yeah, we're sort of expecting it. So alright. But yeah, so anyway, got the car leveled out again. Quite happy with it. Now I've got it, as good as I can really get it. I think where I was supporting the car too, because I can't really go right up the back, it did, droop a fair bit. But anyway, I've got it pretty stable. Now it should be enough to work with. We'll probably just have to keep rechecking things as we go. But yeah, I need to do the wheel arches, just find the center line, which I probably should have done when the subframe was still in. It would have been a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, I've just got to find the center of that now, which I'm sort of just going to have to wing it and check a couple of times. So let's get it. Got my center points for the wheel arches and everything. If I was, for whatever sadistic reason, to do this again, I would do it first, because it created all sorts of dramas, but happy now, got it where I want it. So basically hours upon hours of measuring and leveling has put me at a point, where I can have green lines on the ground that line up with things. So that's running down. You won't be able to see it, but there's a plumb bob in front of the car lined up with the center down there. Interestingly enough, it looks like the transmission center too, but anyway, lines on the car, the straight lines across for the center line of the axle, as well as marks on the ground either side, which is cool. you know, having the marks on the car, having, you know, like a center point and having both ways underneath is awesome. It's going to be easier if I ever need to if you know the car moves, if I need to move the car, I'll be able to just do like plumb bob or whatever to get it right. But yeah, it's taken me quite some time, even just with leveling the car, being on the ground. It's fun. So anyway, I can't even remember what I was trying to do after this, but I think I'm going to just get a couple more lines underneath the car now that I'm 100%, and just have a cross point on the ground as well. But basically, to have that cross on the ground with quite a significant amount of time makes me happy. So we can move on to the next bit. Right, so got a few measurements off the diff, gave it a bit of a light coat just in some etch primer so I can put marks and C marks on it, as well as just to protect the bits that I've grinded back. So yeah, got like the center point, which is dead center to the pinion anyway, which is fine, as well as just put a few different marks on the tubes, just for reference, like go a bit overboard with some of it, but rather have it not need it. Yeah, it's cool. Get it under the car, probably just use some straps to sort of hold it up, I think, for now, as well as the jack, and try and put a few different reference marks just for the center line and everything, both left and right, probably, just rather than trying to work off the one line in the center. So let's get it under there. Right, so a bit of a, I guess, exciting moment. It's very obviously temporarily in there, but first time, you know, seeing the diff under the car, which is pretty cool. Been a lot to even get to this point. Trying to, you know, make sure, do all the right things, do them twice, double check and just make sure, other than obviously checking the wheel arches beforehand. But it's cool to see. So from that point, it's pretty much get the factory struts in place to be able to hold the diff, just to keep it, you know, hanging, rather than the ratchet straps in the jack, which is then when I'm going to have to modify the coilovers as well. So cool to see. Yeah, I'm going to have a bit of a look, see what it's like with one of those coilovers in. I do already see one thing that'll be a problem, which it was pretty much known anyway, but just with where the rail runs over the top, just for clearance, because I sort of needed to figure out my rough ride height pretty soon, but one of the rails that runs across the back is like right where the top of the diff would be, but yeah, no real big drama, just to, you know, sort of cut that section out and plate it back up, but expecting there's going to be a fair bit of, you know, massaging or, you know, replacing the floor pan in areas for the clearance, because, you know, been made aware that need to consider the travel as well, because that'll add on top. But it is cool to see the diff in there, which is awesome. So I might just bolt the all coilovers in now and just sort of get have a bit of a look at where they are and start trying to figure out some mounts to get the diff hanging, at least. If I can do it before having to cut the floor out, just for a reference, that'd be good. But yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so new day, getting back to the forest. So it's been about a week since I've played with it, just due to a new job, so that sort of occupied a fair bit of time. But basically, you know, the first things I've got to sort of do today, get the old restruts out, the BCs, get them out of the car. I've got a couple of bottle jacks that I've got from super cheap, just some cheap ones that I can sort of weld some attachments to, which that is going to do the supporting of the diff for me. That at least that way I can work with a bit more precision, because, you know, ratchet straps, I can't keep them into place, front to back, all of that sort of thing. So anyway, that'll be good. Just sort of try and come up with some plate that'll hold it nicely. I'm sort of in two minds at the moment in regards to the struts, how viable it's actually going to be with modifying these BCs with the second handies I've got for the mounts. I'm starting to sort of second guess, sort of starting to think it might not be the best way to go, just because I don't think I've got I think the length of the BCs is too long, but it also just does depend on where they will mount and if I can match those angles. So I'm going to sort of cross that bridge when I get to it. I might even end up substituting those struts and modifying them now for the bottle jacks and start looking at everything else in regards to the forelinks and the clearance, but I'm just going to sort of play it by ear. I didn't measure the suspension droop when I had the old rear end in with the BCs, which is a little bit annoying because it would have just given me an ability to sort of measure how much travel it would be to ride height. So for now, again suggested by Gordon, pull the springs off the coilover so they can compress. But anyway, I'm going to do one thing at a time, try and get these mounts done for the bottle jack and go from there. Right, so after a bit of thought and measuring and whatnot, basically to make this extension for the jack that is also going to support the axle involves an old R31 caster rod. Recycling is good for the environment, and that's basically it. So going to get started on that, trust the process. Right, so just did a bit of a test run with those bottle jacks. Not 100% by all means. Got to cut the channel out a little bit deeper so they can sit in there a bit further, as well as just going to weld some plates to one side so that when the diff tries to rotate, it'll hit those plates and stop. So still undecided about the struts for now. So I do think I can probably get these where I need them. But regardless, I'm just gonna get these right, so get back to it. Right, so a bit of an update a couple of days later. I don't want to say I've hit a wall, but I've sort of run into a bit of a problem. It was something I just wasn't really too aware about, to be honest. Long and the short is to do with the coilovers and mounting them. So I've done a fair whack of research and asked a few people and got a good bit of input, and basically when I've taken these coilovers out, I've measured their sweeps both front to back, as well as side to side, just to see where they are. Side to side is predominantly more clearance. There is some factors about like suspension travel, etc., which for a drift car it's not going to apply. For four-wheel drive it seems to be a predominant thing. But I did measure front to back as well when I've taken them out. Now, basically when I've measured them, I've got about 8.4 degrees, I think it was, that it was sweeping towards the front of the car. If we can see in there, I've got like 10 degrees at the top of the strut tower. Again, I can double check my measurements because I'm not really too sure how the coilover itself could be different to the strut tower, but it is sort of roughly in there. But regardless, the issue is, and I've drawn a diagram just to make it easier, I need the strut to be mounted on the top of the diff. Now, I wasn't 100% sure about this. Again, I'm not rushing, so I've got the time to think about this sort of stuff, and I've never done this before, and I'm a diesel mechanic technically, so I am learning from this, which is the whole point, and a lot of it is thinking forward. So I've gone to look at the mounts, and I'm like, it just doesn't seem right, which is when I found out that I need the suspension to be mounted directly on top of the diff tube. Might seem like common sense. Maybe I'm a bit too hung up in doing it, but I hadn't really thought about that. So basically what the issue is now, strut tower is about 10 degrees, strut's about 8.4. I need this strut to be in the center of the diff tube on the top. Slightly off, tiny bit, can live with it by the sounds of it, but not what it currently is. So my options are pretty much at the moment, move the axle forward to make it perfect with what I'm working with. The angle is still going to be pretty extreme, a bit too extreme by the sounds of it, because what's going to happen being here, if I mounted it here, it's going to try and pull the diff around like that as it rotates up and down. Sorry, as the diff travels up and down. With the Watts link, sorry, not the Watts link, with the 4-link setup up here, it's going to cause issues with the arms when they're trying to move up and down. I need this strut to basically act like a shock absorber. That's what it is meant to do. If it's mounted offset like it was for the IRS, which is different because each wheel's working independently, I'm going to run into issues where I'm going to have the strut essentially fighting the other arms, so it won't make it a smooth linear transition. I'm sure I could slap it together and it might work, but it's just not right, so I'd rather do it right. So now I'm in a bit of a path where I've got to decide how I'm going to go about it, whether I look at some alternate strut tops, even adjustable to take up the difference, or some sort of adapter plate, which then I've also got to consider the length of the strut that I'm trying to use, which I think is, by the looks of things, going to be a bit too hard. I have stripped the coilovers. It's a bit dark over here, but I've stripped the factory one down, measured the sort of stroke and tried to get a good gauge of where ride height is and how much usable length I've got. And I'm pretty close to like the bottom of that coilover to the tube in its position it needs to be with where my current ride height is set, which I'm matching front currently. So do plan to have the car lower, but this way I can work with more room either way. But the main problem I've got now is where that strut's going to mount. So I've either got to look at some alternate strut tops or different struts, different strut towers. That's where I'm at the moment. It's a fair bit of time because it's not as simple as chuck a different strut top in it. There's a lot to consider, so that's been taking up a lot of time, which is where I'm currently at. So I'm going to keep doing some more research, reading, and try and figure out the best way to go about this. So this is all the back end stuff. It's sort of not as straightforward as just chuck an axle in, which I knew, and I didn't really know what hurdles I was going to have to jump over, but this is a pretty good one. I can't even start really on the link arms until I figure this out, because there's a lot of factors that come into it. If I've got to move the axle from basically dead center in the wheel arch, that's where the factory wheel sat, that encounters other problems with clearance and whatnot. So I've got a fair bit of thinking, planning and research to do, but all part of the fun. Right, so I've sort of got the strut set up here, just to try and make it easier to show what I'm trying to explain. I just need to double check quickly. Okay, so 85. So basically what I've worked out with the strut, coilover, whatever, is it would be compressed about 85 millimeters from where it is, and that will give us about center, so about where you would expect the ride height to be, so you've got equal travel up and down.
if we look here again, so this is the degree we've got. It's not 100% accurate due to how it's mounted, but you know, over 9 degrees of sweep. There's, you know, something going on. There is some movement because it is a rubber bush, so not sure if that's where the difference picks up. But I basically got this laser set on the center of the tube for ride height, roughly for the sake of what I'm doing. If we look here, you can already see that like we are a good, like at least 7 or so mil, that it is sitting below the center line. So if we were to go to the actual top, we're like getting into 25-30 mil, which, you know, this in theory would be pushed up 80, let's say 80 millimeters, which would then give us 50 to play with on the bottom when you look at the difference. So that also isn't much for then having to make a mount. So if we look at 50 mil, that's how much room I got to play with for a lower mount on the top of the tube. But then there's also the issue of angle. So if I was to run an adapter, that's going to drop the height. Sorry, it's going to bring the coil level even closer to the diff, just from the basically the strut top being different. Yeah, so it's, you know, the other option then is I can move the axle forward roughly, you know, 90 to 100 mil, but again the angle's wrong. That's way too far forward. My clearance is just going to go to complete rubbish. So that's sort of the problem I'm dealing with at the moment. That takes, you know, it's a lot of time, a lot of things to consider that I didn't really necessarily think about at the start, but you know, I didn't expect this to all work exactly how I wanted it to. So I'd rather do it properly, I'd rather do it right, which is why I'm taking the extra time. So yeah, I've got to revisit this. Whether I could get away with even having like a camber top that I could use to change the sweep. The only problem, and again I just need to set the laser up to sort of see if I'll set that center with the tube to basically then center on the top of the strut tower. That could give me an indication of, you know, if I was to rotate the strut around. So basically, if I was to have adjustable camber tops, but rather than adjusting camber, they're adjusting caster, I guess in this case. If that brought the strut over there, if I was like close to 0 degrees of sweep on that coil to get it like centered on the top of that tube, that would be sufficient. So that's an option. I can't, it's very hard to sort of envision. I need to test it, which then also means dropping the axle down to get an idea of, you know, clearance and whatnot, which again the coilover being too long makes it a bit difficult. So it is a bit of mucking around and it takes a lot of time. So just wanted to sort of give an update. Yeah, trying to get all this stuff right from first go. So I expect to bugger up a few things. There's already been a few things, you know, I didn't even think about at the start that would have made my life a lot easier, even center line of the wheel arch and whatnot. But anyway, hopefully that gives a better indicator on the headache I've given myself.